The Empire's ultimatum. The stars above Earth were peaceful, quiet, and full of light. It had been more than 300 years since the last Great War. Humanity had spread across nearby systems, building colonies and trade stations. The people had forgotten the sound of war, but peace never lasts forever. One evening, as the United Earth Council gathered in orbiting station Orion Prime, an unknown signal broke through every channel. The message was clear and terrifying. "This is the voice of the Galactic Empire," it said, cold and mechanical. "Your planet and its colonies now belong to us. Surrender your fleets, your resources, and your loyalty, or Earth will be erased from the stars." The council chamber fell silent. Leaders looked at each other in disbelief. The Empire was a name spoken in fear, a massive civilization that ruled half the galaxy. They had destroyed hundreds of worlds before. And now they had found Earth. Admiral Rhea Morgan, commander of Earth's defense fleet, stood up slowly. Her voice was calm but strong. "Transmit this message back," she said. "Tell them humanity does not surrender." The room trembled with quiet determination. But deep inside, everyone knew the truth. Humanity was not ready for war. Earth's fleet was small, built for peacekeeping and patrols, not for full-scale battle. Most of its ships were old, their weapons outdated. The Empire's armadas, on the other hand, were countless, with ships large enough to block the sun. Still, Rhea refused to bow. Outside the station, the dark of space shimmered with distant lights. Hundreds of Imperial ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, their engines glowing blue like fire. They came in formation, silent, unstoppable. The invasion had begun. Across Earth, fear spread like wildfire. News channels showed images of the Imperial fleet approaching. People gathered in streets watching the sky. Some cried, others prayed. The old ones whispered stories of ancient wars, stories of the time when humanity ruled the stars. At the military command center, Rhea stood before a holographic map. Each red light marked an incoming Imperial ship. "Can we stop them?" asked one of her officers. Rhea looked at the map for a long moment before answering. "No, but we can make them remember who we are." The council ordered all colonies to evacuate. Ships filled with civilians fled toward deep space, but as they ran, an old signal began to echo from the edge of the galaxy. It was faint, almost lost in static. "Code Black," it said, repeating over and over. No one had heard those words for centuries. Rhea frowned as the technicians tried to trace it. "Where is it coming from?" she asked. One of them turned pale. "Admiral, it's coming from beyond the Orion Rift," he said quietly. Rhea's heart skipped a beat. The Orion Rift, a region of dead space, full of wreckage from the old Terran wars. No ship had gone there in centuries. She walked toward the viewing deck, her eyes on the stars. "Activate deep-range scanners," she ordered. The officers hesitated. "Admiral, you don't think—" "I do," she interrupted. "If the stories are true, then we are not alone." Far away, beyond the rift, something ancient began to stir. Massive metal giants rested in the dark, covered in dust and silence. Their engines were cold, their systems asleep. But the old signal, Code Black, reached them at last. One by one, lights flickered on. Faint but alive in the heart of the lead ship, a voice spoke for the first time in centuries. "Admiral Kale." Awakening sequence complete. Kyle opened his eyes. The cryo chamber mist swirling around him. His body ached, his memories blurred. "How long have we slept?" he asked softly. 312 years, replied the ship's AI, its voice calm. Kyle took a deep breath, staring at the stars through the frosted glass. "And Earth?" he asked. The AI paused. "Under threat, sir," it answered. "The Galactic Empire has declared war." Kale closed his eyes, the weight of his duty settling once more. "Then we wake the others," he said. "All ships, full power. Signal to fleet," humanity calls, across the dark void. Hundreds of sleeping warships came alive. Engines hummed, weapons glowed, and ancient Terran emblems burned once again. The Black Fleet was rising from its grave. For centuries they had waited, silent guardians of humanity's forgotten glory. Now their purpose had returned. Kale stood on the bridge as the stars lit up around him. His voice steady, his heart full of fire. "Set course for Earth," he said. "Let the Empire see what they have awakened." And far away, in the quiet orbit of Earth, Admiral Rhea watched the skies. The scanners showed faint signals emerging from deep space. Her eyes widened, and a small smile crossed her face. "They're coming," she whispered. "They're really coming." The signal in the void. Far beyond the edge of known space, the void stretched endless and silent in the heart of that darkness. Ancient metal giants slept beneath drifting dust and shattered moons. The Black Fleet, humanity's greatest secret, had waited for over 3 centuries, forgotten by time and myth. Now, the signal had reached them once more, echoing through the frozen vacuum like a heartbeat returning to life. Inside the command ship TNS Revenant, Admiral Kale stood before a flickering display. Blue light reflected off his scarred face as he watched systems hum awake. Engines warmed, reactors pulsed, and thousands of cryopods glowed faintly across the fleet. He could feel it, the old war drums of humanity beating again. "Status report," Kyle said quietly, his voice rough from long sleep. The ship's AI Echo responded instantly. "All systems functional at 68%. Admiral," it said, "life support and engines stable. Weapons grid charging." Kyle nodded slowly, looking out the massive viewport. 1,000,000,000 stars shimmered in the distance, and among them, one blue light, Earth. He hadn't seen it in lifetimes. It looked so small now, but it was still home. "Transmit fleet-wide wake protocol," Kale ordered. "Revive all command officers." Across the void, other ships began to stir, the TNS Valor, Eclipse, Omen, and Black Star, names once feared across the galaxy, now reawakened under the shadow of the rift. Old engines flared like the return of forgotten suns. As the command centers came online, holograms of officers appeared one by one, their uniforms ancient, but their eyes burning with new purpose. "Admiral," said Captain Sorin of the Eclipse, his voice steady, "we thought the war ended centuries ago." Kyle nodded. "It did," he said, "but it seems our enemies never truly died." He gestured to the glowing data feed on the screen. "The Empire has declared war on Earth." The officers exchanged glances. For a moment there was silence, broken only by the low hum of awakening reactors. Then Sorin spoke again. "Then our oath still stands," he said. Kyle smiled faintly. "Yes," he replied. "We swore that if Earth ever fell, we would rise again." Meanwhile, deep in Imperial space, the Galactic Empire scouts had detected something strange. A faint energy surge near the Orion Rift, a sector long believed to be dead. "Possibly old debris from the Terran War," one officer said. But their commander frowned. "No debris glows like that," he muttered. "Send a recon squadron." As the Imperial ships moved closer, they felt a strange static across their sensors. The space around them shimmered, bending like heat over sand. Then, out of nowhere, a shadow appeared, a single dark shape, massive and silent, the Revenant. Before the Empire's ships could react, the shadow's hull lit with white fire. In one blinding flash, the scout fleet vanished. Erased without a sound, the void was silent again, as if nothing had ever happened. On the Revenant, Kyle watched the explosion fade from the display. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate. "Echo," he said softly. "Prepare communication to Earth." The AI flickered for a moment, then responded, "Connection established." "Admiral." Kyle took a deep breath. "This is Admiral Kyle of the Black Fleet," he said, "to any surviving Terran command. We are returning home." The message traveled across light years. On Earth, the signal broke through every encrypted channel. Admiral Rhea stood in stunned silence as she heard the voice. Static crackled through the speakers, followed by Kale's calm tone. "This is not a myth," he said. "We live, and we are coming." Rhea's officers stared at her, speechless. "Is it really them?" one whispered. Rhea nodded slowly, her eyes bright. "Yes," she said. "The Black Fleet still exists." For the first time since the Empire's arrival, hope returned to Earth. Meanwhile, the Empire began to take notice. The High Council received reports of missing scout ships and strange readings. "Something is moving near the rift," said the intelligence officer. "Unknown class, unregistered design." The Emperor himself leaned forward on his throne. his eyes narrow and cold. "Then we will move first," he said. "Crush whatever wakes in the dark." But in that darkness, the Black Fleet gathered, thousands of ships aligned in formation, their black armor absorbing the light. The fleet's engines burned like blue fire as Kyle raised his hand. "Set course for Sol System," he commanded. "Humanity calls." And we answer. As the fleet entered hyperspace, the stars stretched into streams of light. The old war anthem of the Terran Navy began to play through the comms. Soft and haunting, men and women who had slept for centuries took their stations. Their faces calm but fierce, no one spoke. But everyone understood what this meant. It was not just a battle for survival. It was the return of a forgotten people on Earth. The skies shimmered as Imperial warships entered orbit. But somewhere beyond the stars, humanity's vengeance was already on its way, and for the first time, the Empire would learn the true meaning of fear. The Empire strikes first. The sky above Earth burned red as the first Imperial ships entered orbit. They came like a storm, dark and silent, their hulls glowing with the fire of charged weapons. Cities trembled as sirens wailed across the continents. For the first time in centuries, humanity was staring at war again. Admiral Rhea Morgan stood on the command deck of the orbital station Aegis Prime, her hands gripping the railing. Dozens of holographic screens showed the enemy formation closing in. "Report," she said, her voice steady but tense. "Imperial fleet detected in high orbit, Admiral," replied her officer. 74 capital ships, 2 dreadnoughts, and hundreds of smaller craft. Rhea's heart tightened. That was more power than Earth's entire defense network could handle. "Activate all planetary shields," she ordered. "Deploy every fighter we have." Her commands echoed across the fleet. From hidden bases and underground hangars, Terran ships launched into the sky. Sleek fighters and old cruisers rose to meet the enemy, their engines glowing like tiny blue stars against the void. The Empire fired first. A wall of plasma erupted from their ships. Tearing through the upper atmosphere, energy beams slashed across the sky, striking defense satellites and orbital relays. Explosions lit the heavens as metal rained down toward Earth. Rhea watched the destruction with cold fury. "They want us to kneel," she whispered. "But we will make them bleed," the Terran fleet countered. Missiles streaked across the void, guided by the steady hands of brave pilots. Explosions rippled across the Imperial formation, but their shields absorbed most of the impact. For every Imperial ship that fell, 3 Terran ships were lost. Still, humanity refused to retreat. On the surface, chaos spread. Cities lost power. Communication networks failed. Families hid in shelters as fire streaked across the sky. Children watched from windows, whispering to each other, "Will they destroy us?" No one had an answer. Inside the Imperial flagship Radiant Spear, Admiral Vorax watched the battle unfold. A cruel smile touched his lips. "Primitive technology," he muttered. "Earth will fall before night." But then one of his officers hesitated. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting a massive energy surge near the edge of the system." Vorax frowned. "Origin?" "Unknown, sir. It's approaching fast." Vorax waved it off. "Ignore it," he said. "Finish the bombardment." Back on Aegis Prime, alarms blared across every deck. Rhea's communications officer shouted over the noise. "Admiral, we're losing orbit control." Rhea steadied herself, eyes fixed on the main display. "Keep firing," she said, "even if we fall. They'll remember Earth fought." And then something changed. A sudden ripple spread through the stars, faint at first, then brighter. Every Imperial sensor went wild. "Admiral!" cried the technician on the Radiant Spear. "There's something emerging from hyperspace." Vorax leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "What is it?" Out of the black void, shadows began to form. Huge, silent, and dark as night, the first ship appeared, its hull scarred. Its design ancient yet terrifyingly powerful. Then another and another. Hundreds of massive warships surrounded the system, forming a wall of darkness. Their lights flickered like the eyes of sleeping giants awakening. Admiral Rhea stared at her console, speechless. Her officers stood frozen as new readings flooded the screen. Unknown contacts. Massive power signatures. Thousands of them. The operator said in disbelief. Rhea's heart began to race. "It can't be," she whispered. But then she heard the signal. a deep pulse echoing through every comm channel. One word repeated again and again. "Revenant," a voice broke through the static, strong and calm. "This is Admiral Kale of the Black Fleet. Earth, hold your line. We're here." The Imperial ships froze in confusion, their captains staring at the new arrivals. Vorax's smile vanished. "What are those?" he demanded. His sensors officer replied with trembling hands. "Sir, they're Terran." The Revenant moved into formation at the head of the Black Fleet. Its weapons glowed faint blue as massive cannons charged. Kale stood on its bridge, calm and resolute. "Target the lead dreadnought," he ordered. "Fire on my mark." The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. "Mark!" The first blast ripped through the void. A single shot, pure, focused energy, cut through the Imperial dreadnought's shields like paper. The explosion that followed shook the heavens. Every Imperial ship paused, sensors blinded by the blast. Rhea and her crew watched in awe as the ancient fleet descended like angels of vengeance. "By the stars," whispered one of her officers. "It's real." Rhea smiled through tears. "Yes," she said softly. The Black Fleet has returned. Across the battlefield, Imperial morale crumbled. Their commanders shouted orders, trying to regroup, but it was too late. The Black Fleet opened fire in unison, their weapons burning brighter than the sun's. One by one, Imperial ships fell apart, swallowed by fire and silence. Admiral Kyle watched as his fleet tore through the invaders, his voice calm but his heart heavy. "Echo," he said quietly. "Transmit this to all Terran forces," the AI replied. "Ready, Admiral," Kyle spoke into the comm. His words carried across every human ship and every Imperial frequency. "This is Admiral Kale of the Terran Navy. To the Galactic Empire, you declared war on Earth. Now, you will learn why that was your greatest mistake." The Black Fleet advanced. The Empire began to retreat, and in that moment, as the skies cleared and the fires dimmed, humanity's forgotten strength returned to the stars. Wrath of the Black Fleet. The void burned with light as the Black Fleet unleashed its fury. Each blast from their cannons tore through the Empire's warships like paper. The silence between shots was filled with the screams of tearing metal and the dying roars of engines. To those watching from Earth, it looked like a storm of vengeance written across the stars. Admiral Kyle stood on the command bridge of the Revenant. His face calm, his voice steady. "Maintain formation. Focus fire on their capital ships," he ordered. Around him, the bridge crew worked with silent precision. They had done this before, centuries ago, in a war that everyone thought was over. Across the battlefield, the Imperial dreadnought Radiant Spear tried to rally its fleet. Admiral Vorax shouted, "All ships, return fire! Do not retreat." But his command meant nothing. The Empire's fleet was in chaos. Their weapons too slow, their shields too weak. Every time they struck the Black Fleet, the dark ships absorbed the damage and responded with 10 times the power. Kale's second-in-command, Commander Rin, looked at the tactical display. "They're breaking formation." "Admiral," he said. Kale nodded slowly. "Then push forward. And don't give them time to recover." The Revenant led the charge, its massive engines burning like the core of a sun. The other ships followed, moving in perfect formation, each one older than any Empire vessel, yet deadlier than anything seen in the modern galaxy. They fired again, and the void turned white with destruction. On Earth, Admiral Rhea watched the feed from her damaged station. Her eyes were wide, her voice trembling as she spoke. "They're unstoppable," she whispered. "For centuries, the legend of the Black Fleet had been just that, a legend. A myth told in whispers about the ancient Terran war fleet that vanished into the dark during the Great Exodus. But now they had returned, real and alive, and their vengeance was absolute. The Empire's flagship reeled from the bombardment, decks collapsing, shields flickering inside. Admiral Vorax tried to keep control. "Divert power to shields," he roared. "Evacuate the lower decks." But it was too late. A single beam from the Revenant struck the Radiant Spear through the center, splitting it apart in one blinding flash. The explosion lit up the void, a silent bloom of light that marked the death of an Empire's pride. The comms filled with Imperial distress calls. "Command, this is Battle Group Theta. We're falling back." Admiral Vorax is down. We've lost the flagship. Retreat, repeat, retreat. Kale listened to the voices, cold and steady. No survivors for the ones who fired first, he said quietly. Target those still engaging our ships. Leave the retreating vessels for later. His words carried the weight of centuries of silence. The Black Fleet had been lost long before most humans alive were born. They had vanished during humanity's darkest hour, when the old empires turned against them. Now they were back, older, colder, but still Terran to the core. Rin glanced at Kale. His voice low. Admiral, the Terran Defense Fleet is hailing us. Kyle nodded. Patch them through. The image of Admiral Rhea appeared on the holoscreen, her face lit by the glow of distant explosions. Black Fleet, she said, almost in disbelief. Is it really you? Kyle gave a faint smile. We never stopped watching. Admiral, he said, when Earth called, we answered. Rhea swallowed hard. The Empire will send reinforcements, she warned. They won't let this go. Kyle turned toward the dark window of the bridge, his reflection flickering in the stars. Then we'll remind them what it means to fight humanity, he said. We built the stars they now rule, and we'll burn them down if we must. The Black Fleet reorganized. Moving like a tide through the debris field, Imperial wrecks floated silently, their fires dying in the vacuum. Survivors fled into hyperspace, carrying tales of terror and defeat back to their homeworlds. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire feared a name, Earth. As the last Imperial ship jumped away, the battlefield fell quiet. The glow of burning ships faded, replaced by the cold shimmer of distant light. Rhea's voice came over the comm. Admiral Kale, you saved us. Kyle looked down for a moment. No, he said softly. We saved ourselves. He turned to his crew. Send the coordinates to the fleet, he ordered. Earth will rebuild, but we're not done yet. Rin frowned. What's next, Admiral? Kyle's eyes hardened. The Empire will regroup, he said. And when they return, we'll take the war to them. The camera feed from orbit showed the Black Fleet forming a massive circle around Earth, their dark hulls glowing faintly in the sunlight. To the people below, it was a sight of hope. To the enemies of humanity, it was a warning. The legends had awakened. The stars now belonged to Earth again. And as the Black Fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving trails of blue light behind, one message echoed across the galaxy. Simple, powerful, and unforgettable. Earth does not surrender. The return of humanity. The stars trembled as the Black Fleet crossed into Imperial space. For the first time in history, the hunters had become the hunted. The Empire's once proud banners were now symbols of fear, their fleets shattered, their generals silenced. But Kale knew this was only the beginning. Admiral, Commander Rin reported, the Imperial core systems lie ahead. Kyle stood before the holographic map, his eyes cold and sharp. The heart of the Empire, he said quietly. For centuries they ruled over others. Now they will face what they created. The fleet emerged from hyperspace above the crimson world of Vornus Prime, the Empire's capital. Below them, millions of Imperial citizens looked up in silence as the sky darkened. The Black Fleet's shadow stretched across the planet like an omen. Alarms rang through the city as Imperial forces scrambled to defend their world. Kyle's voice echoed across the comms, steady and calm. This is Admiral Kale of the Terran Black Fleet, he said. For 3 centuries, humanity slept beneath the stars you claimed as your own. But today, we have awakened. Lay down your weapons and surrender. Your war is over. The Imperial High Council ignored his warning. Their arrogance burned brighter than their fear. Fire everything we have, shouted Lord Regent Valen. The humans must be destroyed. From the ground, anti-orbital cannons roared, sending energy bolts skyward, but the beams vanished against the Black Fleet's shields. Moments later, Kale raised his hand. Return fire, he said, his tone like iron. The Revenant unleashed a single plasma lance that struck the surface. The blast leveled an entire fortress without touching the city beyond. Kale's aim was precise, not of vengeance, but of warning. He did not want genocide, he wanted remembrance in orbit. The Empire's last battle group appeared. Hundreds of ships, massive and shining like blades. The Emperor's own fleet had arrived. Kyle watched the formation with calm interest. So, he whispered, You finally came. A voice came over the Imperial broadcast, deep and cold. This is Emperor Tarvos of the Galactic Empire. You defy me with relics of a forgotten age. You think you can frighten us with your ghosts? Kale smirked faintly. No, he said. We came to remind you what those ghosts can do. The two armadas met in the void. Light and darkness clashed, turning space into a storm of energy and fire. Imperial ships fired everything they had, but the Black Fleet's formation was perfect. Every move planned, every strike precise. Kale commanded like a man who had fought 1,000 wars and survived them all. Each Terran ship moved in rhythm, a dance of death that tore the Empire apart. One by one, the Emperor's ships began to fall. Rin looked at the display, awe in his voice. They're breaking, Admiral. Kyle nodded. Then pressed the advantage. The Revenant pushed forward through the wreckage, heading straight for the Emperor's flagship, the Solar Dominion. The two Titans faced each other in the burning void. Kale stood tall as the image of Emperor Tarvos appeared before him. The Emperor's golden armor gleamed, his eyes full of fury. You cannot win, human, Tarvos said. You are a dying species clinging to memories. Kyle stared back, his voice low but full of strength. Memories are what make us human, he said. And it's the one thing you'll never understand. The Revenant fired its main cannon. The beam tore through the Emperor's ship, splitting it apart. The explosion lit up the void like a new star. The Galactic Empire, once untouchable, was broken. Silence followed, long and heavy. Kyle stood at the viewing deck, watching the debris drift away. Rin approached slowly. It's over, he said. Kyle shook his head. No, he replied. It's just beginning. He turned to the crew. Send this transmission to every system, he said. To every enslaved colony. Every forgotten world. Tell them humanity has returned. Back on Earth. Admiral Rhea stood on the command platform, watching as the transmission spread across the network. People cheered in the streets, their hearts lifted with hope and pride. For the first time in centuries, they were no longer afraid. They were Terran again. They were human across distant stars. Hidden colonies and lost human outposts received the signal. Old flags were raised. Long-forgotten names whispered again. The age of silence was over. The age of humanity had begun. Kale looked out at the stars one last time. The Black Fleet will guard the frontier, he said quietly. As long as humanity stands, we will watch. Rin smiled faintly. And if the Empire rises again? Kale's gaze hardened. Then we rise with them, he said. But never beneath them. The Revenant turned slowly, its engines igniting with the light of 1,000 suns. The Black Fleet followed, moving into the endless dark. Their message echoed across the galaxy, carried by every star in every world. A message that no empire could ever silence. Earth does not kneel. And as the fleets disappeared into the starlit horizon, the galaxy remembered the truth once more. Humanity, the species that refused to die. The species that fought back when all hope was gone. The species that made even the stars tremble. The Terrans had returned.